Are miracles meant for us today, or did something change? Well, here's what has not changed. God keeps working. Divine moral government has not ceased. Spiritual work has not ceased, but evidential miracles have ceased. These are miracles that suspend nature, miracles that act as a public proof of the one that is doing them. And those belonged to a different time, a different dispensation. Well, you might say, why have miracles at all? Well, miracles were not random displays of power. They were evidence. They settled questions about who God is and who Christ is, what prophecy meant. And once those questions were answered, the proof was complete. But here's the modern problem, the current dispensation, the current way that God is dealing with mankind. If miracles are still needed today, then those questions back when, well, the questions are still open, which would mean that Christ is not proven. And that would be a problem. Now, the natural objection to this, you might say, a God who never intervenes is no God at all. And that would maybe be a fair question, because in the past, God intervened quite a bit. But that was with Israel mainly, and the enemies and friends of Israel. Israel was under the law. They lived under a covenant, a quid pro quo. Blessings meant that they were being faithful to God and his law. Silence meant sin or apostasy. Miracles were part of that covenant agreement of blessing. They were covenant evidence. So people do ask, if God parted the seas and Jesus healed whole towns of sickness, why wouldn't he always do that? And that question matters. But here's a forgotten detail. Not one disciple was converted because of these evidential miracles. No one believed because of the miracles. And many of those people who did see miracles, they rejected Christ anyway. Even the disciples, they doubted and were confused after the greatest miracle of all that had already been predicted a few times. Miracles were never faith creators. They were proof of Christ's identity. You see, Jesus healed the sick. He responded to the suffering that was going on all around him, but he never healed to persuade unbelief. His miracles proved who he was. And as long as the kingdom was preached and offered to Israel, well, these evidential miracles were abundant. But when that message was rejected and Christ was rejected and the kingdom was rejected, the message moved outward toward the Gentiles, and the miracles faded and stopped. And it's in Paul that we see this important shift. Paul moves from being able to heal by a touch or even at distance by a handkerchief to being told when he prayed for healing of himself, well, God said, my grace is sufficient, so crack on. It wasn't about displays of power. It was about grace. Israel rejected the prophesied kingdom. And Paul reported, salvation is now sent to the Gentiles, for they will hear it. So public evidentiary kingdom miracles were no longer needed. Faith now rested on grace. And that's where we are today. So when people claim miracles today, well, we need to ask a couple of questions. Does it prove Christ more than he's already been proved? If not, then who rules this present world? What does the Bible say? Well, it says the prince of the power of the air and powers and principalities rule this current earth. And the prince of the power of the air can seem like an angel of light and can do miracles. So do not be careless with signs when you see them. Miracles served the kingdom. Grace serves salvation. And you are saved because the man who was fully man and fully God, Jesus Christ, came to earth, fulfilled prophecy, died for your sins, rose from the grave, and is now seated at the right hand of power with a name above all names. He has given you and me his grace, and through faith, you receive it. And he seeks not your admiration, but your trust. If you liked this content, please consider subscribing, and until next time, God bless.